Good afternoon, Sensei. Thank you for joining us for another in our series of interviews with original Iwama students. Today, I'm pleased to be speaking with Ethan Weisgard Sensei, Dojo Cho of Aiki Shurin Dojo, Copenhagen. And he's been doing Aikido for almost 50 years now. Originally a student of Tomita Sensei, and then started training with Saito Morihiro Shihan in about 1984. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And so tell us a little bit about your first impressions of Saito Sensei.
Well, my first impression was earlier than 1984. Saito Sensei came to Copenhagen when he was visiting Sweden and Denmark. And I believe that was 77 or 78. I just started training. I trained for about a year. So I just saw him from afar and was completely blown away by his embu, the demonstration he did in Copenhagen. But I didn't get close to him at that time. I was just sort of running around trying to help set up practical things. And then in 1984, I was able to go to Iwama as Uchideshi with some of the people from the Copenhagen Aikido Club, which I was an instructor in at that time. And that gave me the opportunity to be with Saito Sensei for 3 months. And that was just an incredible experience. Being with him daily, working in the grounds of the dojo, cleaning, helping sort of keep things shipshape, and then training under his tutelage morning and evening, and experiencing him just as an incredible sensei, a master, but also as a very, very incredible human being.
Tell us about the Uchideshi experience, the live-in experience in the dojo. How did you assimilate it to that?
Well, the Uchideshi experience at that time, in '84, we were 4 people from Denmark, from the Copenhagen Aikido Club, that were there for that time. And 2 had been there a little bit before me, and Torben Dyrberg, who I came together with, one of the other chief instructors of the Copenhagen Aikido Club. Per Thunbo was the first one there, and then Lars Fenger, who I had started training Aikido together with. And so they were a little bit prepared for how the work was supposed to be done. And the idea was basically, it was like an apprenticeship. You got up early in the morning, you swept the dojo, you swept the grounds, you did a little bit of weeding, you had morning practice, you had breakfast afterwards, and then you started morning work, chores, which was cleaning the toilets, it was cleaning the shokudo, the kitchen, it was working in the grounds, sweeping, raking, cutting down bushes, and hauling stuff away. Then it was lunchtime and rest time. Saito Sensei didn't want us to work during the hottest time of the day, which was right around lunchtime.
You were there during the summer.
We were there during the summer, June, July, August. And then you get ready for evening class. You do evening class, and then you would help to clean the dojo, and you might do a little bit of extra training afterwards. And then from there, you would go into preparing the food for dinner, and then relaxing, and getting up again at 5 o'clock in the morning to do the next rounds.
So it's pretty austere there.
It was austere training. It's called shugyo in Japanese, austere training, which means that everything you're doing is actually training. It's Budo training. It's training awareness, seeing what has to be done in terms of work and cleaning, doing it properly, and being aware of your surroundings and working together with people to get the things done. So shugyo is training in every aspect of what you're doing during the day.
And so it's a mindfulness practice.
Mindfulness, exactly. Being present in the moment and being aware of your surroundings, aware of what needs to be done in terms of work, being aware of what you need to work on in your Aikido training, finding time for that, being aware of what has to be done to help other people around you during the day, if they need help in their trainings, working together with them, the chores that have to be done, figuring out how to work together with them to get that done. It's being present all the time.
But of course, as a non-Japanese, there must have been a lot of rules and things to do that you were unaware of.
There were, but Saito Sensei was also very good at teaching us about those things. He taught us about Japanese culture, and he taught us about reigi saho, the correct etiquette. He taught us about table manners, how to eat properly with chopsticks, how to hold your bowl of rice. All of these things which were part of the Japanese culture and society were part of our daily training. And so I'm really thankful to him for that it wasn't just techniques, it was very much about the culture in Japan.
So he was a teacher of all things.
He was absolutely a teacher. He was a sensei. And sensei is all-encompassing. It's not just technique. It's you can sort of compare it with good boxing coaches. Costa Amato, who was Mike Tyson's trainer. He wasn't just a boxing coach. He was a sort of a life coach for Tyson. And you'll find that in other areas where the people who are training you not only for the martial art that you're doing, but they're training you as a human being as well. Saito Sensei was doing that for us too.
So it sounds like you were with a special teacher in a special place.
Iwama was very special, and sometimes you might lose track of the fact that you were in O-sensei's dojo, the dojo that O-sensei built from the ground up together with other people, and that he trained in daily and where he lived. And once in a while, that reality would sort of come back to you, and you would really realize the brevity of the situation. It was incredible. It's a very historic place, and you can feel O-sensei's presence there. And now you can feel Saito Sensei's presence as well.
So you talk about this very joyously, but I'm sure there were some difficult times along the way.
The word definitely. Part of Shugyo is learning how to deal with being admonished for things that you should have done in one way and you did differently. Being able to not crumble under pressure. And Saito Sensei would get angry. He had a powerful temper, and he would let loose if there was something that wasn't done correctly. But that was part of the training. He wanted to let you know what was going on. It wasn't done from a hateful position. It was done from anger because he wanted you to do things as best as you could. And he wouldn't hold a grudge against you if you did something that he got angry at. He'd let loose, and then the storm clouds would pass, and he'd be fine again. It was austere training.
So we're talking about a time in 1984, but you were able to develop a close relationship with Sensei, one that spanned many countries and decades, in fact.
It did. In 1984, when I was there for 3 months, I also met my wife, who was from the Ibaraki area. And that brought me even closer to Saito Sensei in many ways. It brought me, of course, closer to Japanese culture. And he would jokingly say to people that Ethan he's Danish on that side and he's American on that side. I was born in the States. And he said he's Japanese in the middle. And I really took that as a great compliment. because he saw that I was really trying to immerse myself in the culture, which I love and which is a very important part of my life, not only through my family, but also through my connection to Saito Sensei. I wanted to be able to speak with him and to understand what he was saying. He didn't speak English. Not only to learn Aikido from him, but to learn from him in general about all of those things that he would share with us.
So what are some of those enduring lessons?
Some of those lessons had to do with simple things like correct behavior at the table, how to eat properly. And a lot of it was based on Budo, the way that you hold your chopsticks and bring the food up to your mouth. The chopsticks are supposed to come in from the side and not from the front. He would point out that if you point your chopsticks to the front, somebody could do that, and that would be an opening in your defense. And the same thing with the bowl. He said you should hook your thumb over the rice bowl, which is actually not really proper etiquette. But for Budoka, it is, because if you don't have the thumb locking the bowl, somebody could hit the bowl and you get the rice over you, and that would be an opening for an attack. So things like that, he would teach us from a table manner perspective, but also connecting it to Budo. It was fascinating.
And you hosted him many times in Europe.
Yes, the Copenhagen Aikido Club hosted Saito Sensei. I don't have the exact count, but we did 5-day summer camps throughout about a decade. We tried to do them about every second year. Sometimes it would be every third. And it was very intensive. We had Saito Sensei for 5 whole days, all the way through, morning, afternoon, and evening. So we'd be training 3 times a day. And then in the evening, we would have time to relax and eat and drink and talk. And he would just open up so much about all sorts of things. Not so much about Aikido. That would sort of happen during the day. But it would be just sort of interesting conversations about all sorts of different topics. It was an incredible experience to be with him for that amount of time. It was very intense.
So he wasn't only a personality, he shared many really insightful methods for both on and off the mat instruction.
He did. He was an amazing teacher. He had a mind like a computer. He was very systematic, but he was also very good at pedagogical techniques. He would think about how to transmit what he learned from O-sensei in a way that as many people as possible would be able to understand what was going on. He was going into sort of an area of taboo, because in Japanese society, traditionally, you're not supposed to divulge all those secrets. You're not supposed to make it easier for the students to learn. They have to struggle for it. There's a saying in Japanese, waza o nusumu, to steal the techniques. You have to steal the techniques from your teacher. But he went past that. And it was a very sort of selfless attitude towards him being a teacher. He wanted as many people as possible to get what he was teaching. So he devised these kind of didactic ways of conveying what it was he was teaching, breaking techniques down into parts, counting your way through the movements, and then afterwards learning how to connect them. He would explain what it was you were supposed to be doing and what you shouldn't do. Great ways of teaching that really brought the techniques home to many of us.
So this is what's now called the Iwama method.
It is. And he would point out that the people who were coming to Iwama were doing teacher training. When he wanted to admonish us for something, he had 2 ways of doing it. One was the dame method. And everybody who's trained in Iwama knows dame. Dame means bad or wrong. And it's something that you would normally admonish a child with, that word or that term. but he used it for everybody when people weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And it was supposed to shake you up and make you more sharp and aware. And then when he saw that you were a little bit closer to doing it the right way, he would smile and sort of give you a kind of signal that, okay, you're on the right path. The other way he would admonish us was, he would say that if you don't understand the differences in the techniques, the variations, you wouldn't be able to teach. And for him, that was sort of that was a real way of scolding us, because of course he knew that we wanted to be able to teach what we are learning so that we could do the same thing that he was doing, which was to bring the techniques out to as many people as possible.
Sensei passed away in 2002, and you, although you were teaching beforehand, you started Copenhagen Aikishuren Dojo about a year after that?
Yes, in 2003.
And so how has your time with him and your time in Iwama influenced your own role as now a teacher for decades?
I always think of him in every class. And whenever I start a technique, something pops up, some memory of him doing something within the realm of that technique. Some things that he said, some movements that he specified. And I try to not only talk about the technical aspects of what he was teaching, but also to talk about the memories that I have of him as a person and the way that he treated me and others, the way he behaved. He had a great sense of humor. He could be really, really funny, and he liked being sort of silly once in a while. And I like to tell stories so that people get a feeling of him as a person, not just as a teacher and a master technician.
Maybe you could share one story with us?
When we were out working outside during the day, there was an outside water faucet that was used to fill up buckets that we could use for cleaning. And Saito Sensei would putter back and forth on a little moped from his house and then over to the dojo. So he came on his moped and parked the moped next to the water faucet outside. There was a Japanese uchijeshi there who was a little bit new, and he was quite nervous about having to help Sensei. So he's standing there, and Sensei's sort of ordering us around to fix the faucet, and you weren't supposed to lean on it, but you were supposed to make sure that he had to fix the top, the spigot, and things like that. And when Sensei was getting us to work, he would yell at us. It was basically sort of the standard form was he would yell in order to get something done. That's the way that many older Japanese gentlemen and ladies actually want to get things done. They'll yell at you until you get it done. They'll go, okay, good. So he was sort of yelling and bossing us around, and we finally got it all to work. And the Japanese uchijeshi was still quite nervous. He's even more nervous because Sensei was yelling and screaming. And then he got it done. And so he said to the Japanese guy, he said, "いいですよ。じゃあ、かけてごらん." Kakete means to turn it on. Try to turn it on. So the Japanese uchijeshi went over and started the moped. We're like, that wasn't what you were supposed to turn on. It was the faucet. He thought that was hysterical.
Some people lose their center when they're under that kind of pressure.
Exactly. And it was part of Shugyo. He wanted to push us to see if we could still perform under pressure. But sometimes the situation was just such that he could see the humor in it.
So now that you've been doing Aikido for almost 50 years, what advice do you have for those who are starting or maybe don't have 50 years in their own training history yet?
I think the best advice I could think of is don't expect to be able to do the techniques perfectly from the beginning. don't be afraid of making mistakes. Just try to do what you see and try to repeat what you're seeing, and try to stay open. You need to be analytical about what you're doing so you can register the things that you can tell, okay, this wasn't right. But don't beat yourself up about it, because that will take away the joy of actually training. You have to go through the learning process, which is also making mistakes. Sometimes people get a little bit too worried about trying to be perfect right from the beginning. Just give it your best shot and keep on going.
Well, thank you, Sensei, for sharing such great memories and your own insights. Do you have any parting words?
I would just like to say that the people who have been studying directly under Saito Sensei all have memories and all have lots of different techniques that they've learned from him. And I think that we all felt so inspired by the generosity that Saito Sensei had of trying to share as much as he could with as many people as possible. And I hope that we can continue in that same spirit to really try to give as much as we can of what we have been taught to as many as possible, just the way that Saito Sensei did for us.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sensei.
It's my pleasure.